The idea that traditional PCS would dominate forever used to feel unquestionable, but something interesting has been happening quietly in the background. While many people were busy debating whether Windows or macOS was better, Android and Linux began evolving in ways that blurred the lines between mobile devices and full desktop computing. What once felt like experimental setups are now turning into serious alternatives that challenge the way we think about productivity, software, and even what a computer really is. The speed of this shift has surprised even longtime tech enthusiasts, because the change isn't just about hardware getting smaller. It's about entire ecosystems becoming powerful enough to replace what most people used PCs for in the first place. If you look at how people actually use computers today, the majority of tasks revolve around browsers, cloud apps, messaging platforms, and lightweight content creation. This shift started years ago but accelerated when remote work and cloud-based tools became normal. Android devices began supporting desktop modes, external displays, keyboard and mouse input, and multitasking features that felt closer to Linux than to traditional mobile operating systems. Meanwhile, Linux distributions quietly improved their usability, hardware support, and visual polish, making them accessible even to users who never touched a terminal before. Together, Android and Linux started forming a bridge between mobility and traditional computing, and many users didn't even realize they were already crossing it. One of the biggest factors behind this change is affordability and accessibility. Not everyone can upgrade to the latest high-end PC every few years, especially in regions where technology prices feel inflated compared to local income. Android phones, on the other hand, have become incredibly powerful while remaining relatively affordable. When you connect a modern Android device to a monitor and enable desktop mode, suddenly you're working in a windowed environment that feels surprisingly familiar. Pair that with Linux-based applications or web tools, and you begin to see how a single device can replace multiple machines. This isn't just theory anymore. Many people are already using their phones as primary computers without realizing they've crossed that threshold. Linux plays a huge role in this evolution because it powers much of the technology behind the scenes. Android itself is built on a Linux kernel, which means developers can leverage decades of open-source innovation. Over the years, Linux desktops like KDE Plasma, GNOME, and others have evolved to become more intuitive and visually appealing, closing the gap between open-source systems and commercial operating systems. Features like Wayland, improved graphics drivers, and better package management systems have made Linux smoother and more reliable than ever before. For creators, developers, and even casual users, Linux now offers a level of flexibility that traditional PC operating systems sometimes struggle to match. Another reason Android and Linux are gaining ground is the shift toward cloud-based workflows. Instead of relying on heavy native software installed on a local machine, many people now use browser-based tools for editing documents, managing projects, or even creating videos and graphics. Chromebooks demonstrated this concept years ago, showing that a lightweight Linux-based environment could handle everyday tasks without needing a full traditional PC setup. Today, that philosophy has expanded beyond Chromebooks into Android tablets, hybrid devices, and even smartphones running Linux environments through virtualization or container systems. The result is a computing experience that feels lighter, faster, and more adaptable to modern workflows. What's fascinating is how developers and tech enthusiasts have been experimenting with turning Android devices into Linux workstations. Tools that allow Linux distributions to run alongside Android have become more polished, making it possible to code, design, and manage servers directly from a mobile device. This convergence is changing how people think about hardware upgrades. Instead of buying a new laptop, some users simply upgrade their phone and gain a faster processor, more RAM, and better battery life all in one package. It challenges the traditional cycle of PC replacements and opens the door for a more sustainable approach to personal computing. Hardware manufacturers are also responding to this shift. We're seeing more devices designed with flexibility in mind, from foldable phones that transform into tablet-like workspaces to mini PCs running Linux out of the box. External display support, wireless desktop modes, and improved multitasking interfaces are becoming standard features rather than experimental add-ons. The boundaries between phone, tablet, and laptop are fading, and Android plus Linux sits at the center of that transformation. Instead of a single-purpose machine, users now carry adaptable devices that can change roles depending on the situation. Performance is another area where Android and Linux have surprised people. Modern ARM processors deliver impressive efficiency, allowing devices to stay cool and quiet while still handling demanding tasks. Linux distributions have optimized themselves to run smoothly on a wide range of hardware, from powerful workstations to compact single-board computers. As more developers optimize software for ARM architectures, the performance gap between traditional PCs and mobile-powered Linux systems continues to shrink. This shift isn't just about raw speed. It's about efficiency, battery life, and the ability to work from anywhere without carrying bulky equipment. Security and privacy also contribute to the growing appeal of Android and Linux ecosystems. Open-source development allows communities to audit code, fix vulnerabilities, and customize systems to fit individual needs. While no platform is completely immune to security risks, Linux-based environments often give users more control over updates, permissions, and software sources. Android has evolved as well, introducing stronger sandboxing, privacy dashboards, and improved app permissions that give users more transparency over how their data is used. For people who feel overwhelmed by constant background processes and tracking on traditional operating systems, this level of control can feel refreshing. The creative industry is beginning to notice these changes too. Video editors, graphic designers, and musicians are exploring Linux-based workflows that once seemed impossible. Open-source tools have matured significantly, and many creators rely on browser-based platforms that work equally well across Android, Linux, or traditional PCs. The ability to plug a phone into a monitor and start editing or streaming may have sounded unrealistic a few years ago, but today it's becoming a viable workflow for certain types of content creation. As software continues to move toward platform independence, the device you use matters less than the ecosystem you're connected to. Education is another area where Android and Linux are making a huge impact. Schools and students often face budget constraints, and affordable Linux laptops or Android devices provide access to powerful tools without expensive licensing fees. Open-source software encourages experimentation and learning, allowing students to understand how systems work beneath the surface rather than just interacting with polished interfaces. This creates a new generation of users who are comfortable with flexible computing environments and less dependent on a single corporate ecosystem. There's also a cultural shift happening in how people perceive computing power. Instead of measuring productivity by how large or expensive a device is, users are starting to value portability and adaptability. A lightweight Linux laptop or an Android phone with desktop capabilities fits into daily life more naturally than a heavy workstation that rarely leaves a desk. Remote work trends have accelerated this mindset, pushing people to seek tools that allow them to transition seamlessly between home, office, and travel environments. Android and Linux together offer a level of continuity that aligns perfectly with this lifestyle. One of the most interesting developments is how communities drive innovation in the Linux world. Unlike closed ecosystems where features depend entirely on corporate roadmaps, open-source communities experiment rapidly and share improvements freely. This means new ideas appear quickly, from tiling window managers designed for productivity enthusiasts to highly customizable desktop environments that adapt to individual workflows. Android benefits from this innovation indirectly because it shares the same foundational kernel, allowing hardware manufacturers and developers to build features that feel more desktop-like over time. Of course, traditional PCs are not disappearing overnight. High-end gaming, specialized professional software, and certain enterprise workflows still rely heavily on Windows or macOS environments. However, the average user's needs have shifted dramatically. When most tasks revolve around communication, media consumption, light editing, and cloud-based collaboration, Android and Linux begin to look less like alternatives and more like logical evolutions of personal computing. The idea of a single monolithic operating system dominating every category no longer reflects how people actually use technology. Another factor accelerating this transition is the growth of cross-platform development frameworks. Developers now create applications that run seamlessly across Android, Linux, and web browsers without requiring separate codebases for each platform. This reduces the barrier for software availability and ensures users don't feel locked out of essential tools when switching systems. The more software becomes platform agnostic, the less reason people have to stay tied to a specific type of PC. Instead, they choose devices based on convenience, performance, and personal preference. The future of computing might not revolve around replacing PCs entirely, but redefining what a PC actually is. When a smartphone can transform into a desktop environment, when a Linux tablet can handle professional workflows, and when cloud services sync everything instantly across devices, the distinction between categories begins to fade. Android and Linux represent a philosophy of computing that prioritizes flexibility, openness, and efficiency. Rather than forcing users into a single workflow, these systems adapt to how people live and work today. What surprises many observers is how quickly this transformation is happening. Just a few years ago, running a full Linux environment on a mobile device felt like a niche hobby for enthusiasts. Today, manufacturers actively promote desktop modes. Developers optimize apps for larger screens, and cloud platforms ensure continuity across devices. The pace of innovation suggests that the next generation of computing won't be defined by whether you use a phone or a laptop, but by how seamlessly your devices integrate into one cohesive ecosystem. As Android and Linux continue evolving together, they challenge long-standing assumptions about computing. They demonstrate that powerful tools don't need to be locked behind expensive hardware or restrictive software models. They show that open ecosystems can compete with polished commercial platforms while offering unique advantages in customization and control. Most importantly, they reflect a shift toward computing that feels more personal, adaptable, and aligned with modern digital lifestyles. In the end, the question isn't whether Android and Linux will completely replace traditional PCs, but how much of everyday computing they will absorb. For millions of users, that transition has already begun, often without them realizing it. Every time someone connects a phone to a monitor, runs a Linux app on a lightweight device, or relies entirely on cloud tools, they move one step closer to a future where the definition of a PC is no longer fixed. And if current trends continue, that future may arrive far faster than anyone expected, reshaping the tech landscape in ways that feel both inevitable and surprisingly natural.